disobedience against the Elohim. So the earth was cursed, and therefore what we see today in the Afar is because of the curse, just like when we look at the Sahara. The Sahara is another example, and we look at Arabia being another example. You know what I'm saying? But the way we see it today is not the way it was in that day. So when the Metzaf Kedus, when the Holy Scripture says in Orit Ze Fitret, Orit Ze Lidet, or Berashet, if you please, in Genesis, the genealogy of Isis, that Adam was reformed from the Afer of the Midr, of the Midr. What does Midr mean? That's the Ethiopic word, Midr. Midr, Innidr, Midr, Nidr, Madir, to dwell, to spend the night. Idr, Midr, man was created from the what? From the dust, right? That's what, from the reddish brown to black earth. The source. The source is the nigger. The nigger is the source. They know this. How come you don't know it? They recognize this. This is why they want to get a tan as soon as they can. Why they perm their hair, not to get it straighter. They perm their hair to get it coarser. They perm their hair to get it kinkier and kinglier, just like you. You understand? Some of them want to talk about a white Egypt. That's just nonsense. That's just silliness. You understand? Some want to say that the Egyptians had red. They picture themselves as red. I've read this somewhere in some of these Egyptologists say that. Well, nobody really knows why the Egyptians like to paint themselves red, but nobody actually knows why they like to paint themselves red. You understand? They just painted themselves red. Just they chose that. It's so overt and it's so obvious. They were describing themselves, because when they painted other people, if it was the Nehesiah or the Southerners, the Nubians, they painted them darker, blacker. You understand? If they painted the Canaanites, and if they painted some of the Indo-European types, they painted them as being pale people, even with blue eyes. And it's right there when we look at the wall paintings. We see it right there in the wall paintings. Some people say, well, the Egyptians have that complexion because they suntan. I mean, there's actually some neo-Nazis out there and Aryans who believe in this mythology of a white Egypt that says the Egyptians actually, they got suntans. So can we ask the question? Can we ask this question? Was the pyramids a suntanning salon? Is this what white Egypts and white Egyptians want to tell us today? That the Egyptians really, they had that reddish brown complexion, not because they were black. You know, they didn't want to make a difference between one black brother and another black brother, because they want to say that, well, they were Africans, the Egyptians were Africans, but they wasn't black Africans. They wasn't Negroes. Now they bring this N-word back around again, the N-word. Here it comes. The N-word comes back into play again. So Acts of the Apostles, chapter 13 and 1, the key word right there is that Simeon, that was called Neger and Niger, and the link with the true Beta Israel, the link with the true ancient Egyptians, the link with the Ethiopians, the link with black people, whether they were reddish brown black people, whether they were blue black people, whether they were cafe au lait black people. Guess what? They're black people. And that is, you know, this is so indicative of, even when you look at the land. If you look at different types of land, different type of land has these different types of colors, if you please. Depends on where the land is found, depends on what properties are in it. It's only sand. Notice this. Notice the link right now. It's only sand or desert that actually loses absolutely its entire nutrient base, its richness, as well as its complexion. See, sand, you understand, or desert, which is part of the curse that came upon the Adam, the original people who were black people, for lack of a better descriptor. When they were cursed, the land was cursed. Later on, the curse became a genetic curse, and this is where we get the leprosy, the clean lepers. This is where we get the Indo-European types. This is where we get the white man from. The interesting thing about the white Egyptology mythology, the Aryan neo-Nazi mythology, is that if the Egyptians were just tan people, then how come the other people who lived right there too, they didn't become tan? You mean they wasn't allowed into the pyramids, the tanning salons, to get a tan too? It's basically, as some of our African brothers and sisters would tell us, it's basically nonsense. What the white Egyptology crowd and the neo-Nazis say, that the Egyptians were white, is basically nonsense. Because Niger, or Neger, or the nigger, is the ground and the dust of the earth, the source of creation.
We as African people, we must remember our past. We as African people, we must remember our past. No matter how harsh, no matter how horrible, no matter how great, we must remember the good and we must remember the bad. And remember, for African people to have survived the horrors of slavery and colonialism, it doesn't testify to a weakness, it testifies to our strength.